Ooh, interesting. You know what? Let's let's give it a look, shall we? Let's see why girls become boys. My guess is this is going to be in the vein of what is it? The the turf like thing of uh like the J.K. Rowling thing where she's like, yeah, well, if I had had people telling me I could have been a boy, well, maybe I would have done that just so I wouldn't have had to be treated like a woman. Like all of this thing, it's probably going to be something like that.
If you know any middle or high school girls today, or if you are one yourself, it would not be surprising if you know someone who identifies as transgender.
That's true.
The latest statistics indicate that 2% of American high school students now identify as transgender,
Pog.
and the overwhelming majority of them are teenage girls.
Okay. I'm not entirely sure where that statistic's coming from, but I could see that being the
Between
case.
2016 and 2017 alone,
But notice how they very rarely focus on even if this is assuming that this is correct and that the majority of them are teenage AFAB people who are trans. Notice how much more time they spend talking about assigned male at birth people transitioning.
the number of females seeking gender surgery in America quadrupled. But
Yeah. As you know what else? You know what else happened to change drastically in the years following it being something that people were allowed to do? Um, Graph of left-handedness over time. So here we have in the early 1900s, way down here, rate of left-handedness like just over 3%. So few people. And then suddenly, oh fuck, oh god, they're fucking it up. They're making people they're indoctrinating people with the idea that they can be left-handed. Oh god, and then oh, it hmm, it leveled out. It's almost like, I mean, this can't be true, but it almost feels like this is maybe when things become socially acceptable, then people who were always that thing are more likely to be outwardly that thing until those people, the percentage of which actually exist, level out at the percentage that identify that way. It's almost like that's what happens, and that when people are more accepting of trans people and talk more about the idea of being trans, and people who are younger are aware that they are able to be trans as opposed to having absolutely no idea why they feel the way that they do, more people will come out as trans.
if you graduated high school over a decade ago, it was unlikely that you knew anyone who was transgender because, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the condition underlying it afflicted roughly 1 in 10,000 people.
Again, this is something that is a product of social um, people actually being aware of these things enough in order to identify with them.
Or 0.01% of the population. Almost none of these cases were teenage girls. In fact, before 2012, there was no scientific or medical literature discussing adolescent girls who wanted to transition to the opposite sex.
Um, Wait, what did they say here? This is
Literature. In fact, before 2012, there was no scientific or medical literature discussing adolescent girls who wanted to transition to the opposite sex.
I have a feeling there probably wasn't much literature at all about trans people until recent years. My guess would be the reason that they focused more on trans women is for the same reason that conservatives tend to focus more on trans women, which is that they see them as more of a threat. That would be my guess. But people have been trans forever. What was her name? Little Women. Louisa May Alcott. That's right. Louisa May Alcott. Let's see. Early life. There is a lot of evidence that Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, which if you've read Little Women or seen Little Women, a production of it, you would know that the main character is very boyish and very much plays into that, was also probably trans, probably not a woman, probably did not identify that way. Louisa May Alcott, trans. So we've got the book has never gone out of print. Yeah. Countless women say that Little Women taught them how to be a woman, opening their eyes to the many paths their lives could take. And yet, Alcott longed to be a man, always believing she should have been born a boy. She loved to participate vicariously in the adventures and discoveries of boyhood. From childhood to old age, Alcott repeated the same sentiments in her letters and journals. She didn't care for girls' things. She'd been born with a boy's spirit. She yearned to be a man, even describing herself as a gentleman and a man. So, Louisa May Alcott, who, 1800s was around, people have been trans forever. People that you know, people who are famous have been trans forever. But they haven't been openly trans because it wasn't acceptable to be.
That doesn't mean that we didn't know about transgender individuals. Gender dysphoria, the severe discomfort in one's biological sex, has been studied for nearly 100 years. It almost always involved boys who began feeling it between the ages of 2 and 4.
Interesting the way that this has interesting the way that some of the way that they talk about this has changed in just a year, where now they're like actively putting like in the forefront a year ago that often these feelings can be seen as early as between the ages of 2 to 4, whereas in more recent videos they're talking about how fucking ridiculous it would be for that to be the case.
And were strong and persistent in their assertions to everyone around them that they were really girls. When a phenomenon that affects one half of a population, boys, suddenly begins affecting the other half, girls, and when its age of onset shifts from preschool to adolescence, something significant is happening.
That seems like a pretty big fucking stretch, I'll be honest. The idea that something significant must be happening because something that was previously only documented mostly in boys at younger ages is now currently being seen more in AFAB people of slightly older ages is barely even worth mentioning without like any sort of pointed out reason to actually mention it.
In 2016, Brown University public health researcher Lisa Littman began studying the sudden spike in trans identification of teenage girls.
Okay.
She concluded that peer influence and social media influence had a lot to do with this trans teen phenomenon.
Wait, you mean people being aware that they have the option to be trans because other people are trans makes people realize that they are trans? That's wild.
After all, based on parent reports, none of these girls had exhibited symptoms of gender dysphoria at the age that it typically first presents, early childhood.
It's almost like the way that we communicate and the way that we receive information has changed significantly in the past couple decades with the internet and social media and everything, so that people who are well, obviously, we don't know if these people were showing symptoms of gender dysphoria because the parents weren't watching for it. Whereas now we know because people do watch for it. I think a lot of the problem with why it was so much more that the AMAB individuals were seen with this in the years prior is probably based on the fact that more was expected of them. They had more like, this is, you are the man of the house, you have to do these things. And so it was worse, I think, in the minds of the parents for their boy to be acting like a girl than it would be for their girl to be acting like a boy, because the girl acting like a boy could just be ignored, whereas the boy acting like a girl, it had to be dealt with. You couldn't have that.
YouTube, Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok, and Instagram all host popular social media influencers, today's version of
Yeah.
Hollywood stars,
Today's version of Hollywood stars.
who insist that if you feel uncomfortable in your body, you're probably trans.
Yeah, if you feel uncomfortable in your body based on the sex of your body versus the way that you feel about your own identity, you're probably trans. That's probably true. That's a pretty good indicator. I'll be honest, there's not really much of a better indicator for being trans than feeling like you might be trans.
Many promise that if you start a course of testosterone, all of your problems will go away.
Okay, absolutely nobody promises this. Nobody has ever promised this. All of the medical consensus will tell you that, yeah, no, it's not going to fix all of your problems, but it might make you feel a little bit more comfortable in your body. And that might make it easier for you to start solving other problems.
There's every reason to believe that these girls are experiencing real
Oh, I have a feeling at some point we're going to hear the term rapid onset gender dysphoria, which I am aware of as something that they like to talk about, and I believe I have a study in mind which I enjoy to talk about that one. So we'll see if that comes up.
psychological pain. Rates of anxiety, depression, and instances of self-harm are all at record levels for this generation.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with trans people. That's just the world that we are currently living in.
Rates of anxiety, depression, and instances of self-harm are all at record levels.
Or is it that rates of anxiety, depression, self-harm are all at record levels, or is it that they're just more seen? Is it that people are noticing them more, that people are more aware that their kids are anxious and depressed and self-harming?
For this generation, a quick fix becomes very tempting. So it doesn't take much, a YouTube video, a friend's suggestion, to get a troubled girl to buy into the fantasy that gender transition is the answer.
It doesn't take much to make a girl who is not trans go and find some bootleg testosterone off the street and start injecting it, because that's how it happens.
Unfortunately for these girls who do not have typical gender dysphoria, gender transition rarely offers relief. And it's a
I'm not seeing a statistic for this in this video, which I wasn't expecting to see, but also, if that's the case, it's probably largely due to societal issues.
catastrophic mistake for psychologists, educators, and the medical establishment to rush these teens towards a solution that will almost certainly harm rather than heal.
Again, nobody gets rushed towards these solutions. Let's find the specific detransition rate. Let's see. Detransitioning. Okay, one detransition study claims an 80% dissonance rate in trans children. However, when the study was scrutinized, it was discovered that the methodology was deeply flawed. Did not differentiate between young people with gender dysphoria, young people who socially but not medically transitioned, and young people who were simply exploring gender diversity. In fact, nearly half of the children involved with the study could not be located at its conclusion. They were recorded as desisters. Alright, let's see. A survey of nearly 28,000 people found that 8% of respondents reported some kind of detransition. Of this 8%, 62% only did so temporarily due to societal, financial, or family pressures. So, yeah, no, this is not a problem. This is a very high success rate. The bigger failure here than people getting transitioned too rapidly and without any actual reason behind it. The bigger problem is people not having the resources to continue their transition after they've started it.
Because here's what's not in dispute: unnecessary medical gender transition causes irreversible damage.
Yeah, if you have unnecessary medical gender transition, that could cause irreversible damage, depending on what stage you are at, which is why it is a very long, complicated process to actually get to those points where you are doing irreversible, where you are having irreversible effects on your body,
High risk of infertility,
which which is never something that is hidden. People who are transitioning are informed that if they do so, they are likely going to be infertile.
sexual dysfunction,
Again, something that can be that is told to people that can happen when you are transitioning.
and the creation of a permanent medical patient.
I have a feeling we're going to get linked back to that exact same article about the doctors saying that it's a good profit center.
Tragically, we've made it far too easy for kids to take this path.
We certainly have not. It's actually much more difficult for people to get, people of any age, to get gender affirming care than it should be.
Long before they're ready psychologically or emotionally to make such a life-altering decision.
Okay, again, this is not something that they make on their own. This is not a decision that they make on their own. This is a decision that is made with the supervision and guidance of a medical professional who knows what they're talking about. And most of the decisions that are being made at young ages are not decisions that will have life-altering consequences.
Testosterone is easily obtained by today's teens. In Oregon, a 15-year-old can walk into a gender clinic. Yes, there are now gender clinics all over the country.
As there should be, as there are for basically any other kind of, like any other specific kind of healthcare.
And walk out the same day with a prescription for testosterone without her parents' permission.
I would tend to doubt this. Let's see if they actually put sources in this one. Ooh, sources. Let's see. They actually put sources for this one. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, where is, facts and sources. Let's see, where is this one? Historically the boys, okay, well, I'm interested in this one as well, which I was thinking about. While young people face a major mental health crisis, rising rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide call for solutions, which, again, as I expected, has absolutely nothing to do with trans people. It's just the state of the world that we are in. But is being used as evidence for trans people being damaged by the treatment that they're getting. Okay, let's find the source for this. Oregon.gov. Page not found. The page you're looking for does not exist. Okay, well, let's see. Oregon, 15-year-old testosterone. Oh, Fox News. Oh, here's a Snopes article. Let's see what Snopes has to say. Does Oregon now allow young teenagers to obtain gender reassignment, sex change surgery without the knowledge or consent of their parents? Oregon quietly enacted a taxpayer-funded policy that allows minors as young as 15 to undergo sex reassignment surgery without the knowledge or consent of their parents, is the claim. Yeah, obviously it started with a Fox News article. And let's see. Let's see. Oh, the age of medical consent in Oregon has been 15 since 1971? That's wild. Who would have known that it would be something like that? We've asked out HERC whether additional details are available to determine whether any 15 to 17-year-olds have been affected by the policy update or have undergone gender reassignment in Oregon following the change, because obviously there was nothing cited by the Fox article. They also cited a 2008 study that stated most children with gender dysphoria will not remain gender dysphoric after puberty, implicitly suggesting that children in Oregon who might opt for gender reassignment surgery without any input from their parents regarding the serious health decision would invariably come to regret their hasty course of action later in life. However, they eliminated the portion of the study that indicated the children presenting as gender dysphoric had an age range of 5 to 12, meaning all study participants were well under the threshold age of medical consent in Oregon. Yeah, no, it's just fucking insane. They have no actual, like, the source that they link to is a page that doesn't exist. And the claim that they are making is laughable.
16-year-old girls have been able to undergo double mastectomies, the removal of both breasts, without even a therapist's note.
Yeah, I'm sure that's also bullshit. I honestly, at this point, I don't even... While I think that is probably not a great idea, I don't think it did happen. If it did, it's probably not great. You should probably have at least some kind of psychological recommendation when doing that. But, I mean, in some cases, people are not going to be able to get those, even though they do actually need them. So,
Predictably,
never know.
Hasty gender transition, remember we're talking about teenagers here, is now leading to a lot of regret.
You see, again, the rhetoric changed from a year ago, where they're talking about teenagers, and now in the one that was just released a couple days ago, they're talking about children. They very explicitly say children every single time in the newest one, whereas this time, they're talking about teenagers. It's interesting how the rhetoric has evolved.
New testimonials appear on YouTube almost every week from teens who acknowledge that they made a terrible mistake and warn others not to make the same one.
Again, we've gone over the statistics of, oh, hello, Mareko756. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing well. We are currently going over a second PragerU video because I apparently hate myself. We're learning about, just call me Mark, can do. Hello, Mark. We're currently learning about all of the bad takes that PragerU has about trans people, because they put out a video the other day called let's see, what was it? Let's see. Their video the other day was called "The Truth About Gender Affirming Care," and I went back to a previous video that they did after I went through that one. Oh, who is PragerU? Oh, my friend. PragerU is a conservative think tank that loves. Oh, thank you for the follow. It's great to have you here. Loves to masquerade as a university. Loves to make a lot of claims. Okay, conservative site. Okay, yeah, no, it's that's basically all you need to know. Once you know that, you know exactly what they are. But yeah, I mean, you'll learn more as we go through the rest of this. But I was analyzing kind of the way that the rhetoric has changed, because this video is from a year ago, and then obviously this video was from 2 days ago, and the change in rhetoric is insane. Because, like, in this, they're talking about teens, they're talking about, like, the only things that they have, like, explicitly mentioned were, like, 16, 17-year-olds. And then in the other one, in the newer one, they're talking about children constantly. They're, like, always using the term children. Okay, and they are just spreading bullshit about the transition? Yeah, that's basically what's happening. This one specifically is called Why Girls Become Boys. I'm surprised we haven't seen the study about rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is something that they loved to throw around about a year ago, but we still have a little bit left. We'll see if they do.
So, how do you protect
How do
your
you
daughter
protect your
from being
daughter?
drawn into this dangerous and growing trend?
Generally, you can, you know, have them talk to a medical professional and actually have some kind of actual consultation rather than fear mongering about the idea that people can just walk into a clinic and get sex reassignment surgery without any prior uh, anything.
First, limit their exposure to social media as much as you can.
Okay, so this is I'm sorry, can you tell me something about yourself? Did you go through transition? Socially, yes, I am not I haven't had any transition beyond that. I am a trans woman. My name is Justin. I am in my like early to mid 20s. God, it's weird. I'm 24. I'm so old now. But yeah, no, I socially transitioned over the last couple years. It's just I'm very into politics, mostly as a product of kind of having to be because yes, I was assigned male at birth, and basically as a product of having to be um, aware of everything that's going on because we are currently like the big targets of uh, the conservative ire. It's kind of important to know what they're saying so that you know how to stay safe. Yes, I am using she/her. But yes, this is limiting their exposure to social media is very much trying to keep people in an echo chamber where the only opinions that they can hear, the only information that they get has to be filtered through their parents, who they're hoping the conservatives are conservative, um, so that they don't even are not exposed to the idea that they could be trans. Because, like we saw earlier with the graph of left-handedness over time, once something is able to be done, because for years and years and years you could not be left-handed, they would make you right-handed until you were right-handed. But then when they stopped forcing people to be right-handed, the line just shot the fuck up for decades. Um, and then eventually evened out because the number of people who are actually left-handed was congruent with the number of people who were actually like outwardly left-handed, as if like you have to come out as left-handed. But um so yeah, this is just trying to keep people from being aware that the option exists, because as you are more aware, you become it's more likely that if you are that thing, you will actually identify with that thing, and they don't want them to know that. Just something about me in very short. I'm 16-year-old male activist from Slovakia. I'm using he, him. Well, it's good to have you here. I don't know how much you know about U.S. politics, but it is not great over here right now. There are. It seems like more and more every day. It just gets more and more likely that the mainstream conservative position just inches closer and closer to round them up and put them in camps. So we're it's not great.
Several academic studies have already linked the alarming rates of anxiety and depression to young girls' punishing experience on social media.
Which again doesn't have anything to do with trans people at all. This is something that they're throwing around again. I think this is something that they threw around either earlier in this video or in the previous video about how people were more anxious, more depressed. And yeah, that's true, but that doesn't have anything to do with trans people.
A place that often makes them feel sad, unattractive, and alone.
I like that what they're encouraging is to keep them off of that so that you can keep them in the echo chamber of their family, which if they are trans and their family is conservative, is just going to make them even more sad, unattractive feeling and alone than like a, than any amount of like social media possibly could. Is there any way I could support you? I mean, send some donate. Oh no. I'm okay right now. It's mostly just like the state of the country. I am not yet a Twitch affiliate, so there is not a way to subscribe. But you are always welcome to hang out here in the chat and vibe and listen. I do a lot of video game streams. This is my first politics stream, but it's something that I'm interested in doing more of. I just happened to do it just because I saw the new PragerU video and had a taste for blood.
Second, oppose the teaching of gender ideology in your kid's school.
Yeah, and this is the exact same issue where they just want to keep people from being aware of it. It's kind of the exact same thing of the people who are against sex ed in schools, because if you want to, like, a lot of times they'll claim that sex ed is like sexualizing children or grooming children, whereas knowing about, like, having sexual education is actually the best way to avoid having a child be uh, abused sexually, because when they are aware of it and they're aware of what it is and what might be happening, if it's happening to them, because they're aware of it, they know how to communicate it. Whereas, like, the people who are claiming to be for like the betterment of kids and like making sure that they're safe, these people are they're basically, like, in trying to protect these children, as they say, they're actually making them more vulnerable to abuse.
In California, gender identity education begins in kindergarten and proceeds through high school.
My guess would be that the gender identity that education that they're talking about here would be, hey, sometimes people are girls, sometimes people are boys, sometimes they're neither, and that's okay. You can be whatever you want. That's probably the extent of it in kindergarten, and that's what they're upset about.
The theme is that kids' gender identity is totally independent of their physical sex.
This is something that has not changed over the past year. They are still conflating gender and sex, and they will probably always do that. Because to acknowledge otherwise is to give up a lot of their talking points that don't make any sense, but they like to pretend that they do under the guise of gender and sex being the same thing, which, as we saw earlier in the stream, is not true. It's been, like, delineated even in dictionaries up to like 60 years ago. So this is not a new thing in the slightest.
And
it's just the conservatives not being willing to actually use words in ways that they are typically used.
Something that only they can know. Schools can and should insist that every child be treated respectfully without sowing gender confusion in an entire student population.
Okay. Wait, what was the...
Respectful.
Schools can and should insist that every child be treated respectfully. Okay, you say that, but I don't think you actually believe that.
Without sowing gender confusion in an entire
student population. So if that were the case, then we would see much, much higher levels, much, much higher percentages of people coming out as trans if it was sowing gender confusion than we actually do. And if it was gender confusion, a much larger percentage of the people who do identify as trans would either stop identifying as trans or would detransition if they started transitioning. But like we saw earlier, the number of people who detransition is pitifully small, and even of those, most of them detransition not because they don't identify with the gender that they transition to anymore, but because they either societal or financial problems got in the way of their transition continuing.
Third, and most importantly, remember that a teenager is still just a teenager.
And this is basically the same thing that they did at the end of last video with the kids, where they're writing off any like feelings that somebody has just because they are younger, which is something that conservatives tend to do. They tend to write off any, like, the beliefs of anybody younger as being naive and unsubstantiated, even when it's actually more in line with the general medical consensus, scientific consensus. They don't care. They just want to say that they can ignore it because this person is not yet a legal adult. But then, as we know, they don't just want to stop kids and teens from getting gender care. They want to stop everyone. as we've seen in plenty of states right now who have already banned a lot of gender affirming care for children, and are now moving on to trying to ban it for everyone. Because that's the path that we are on.
You don't have to agree with every identity proclamation your daughter comes up with.
You don't have to, but if you respect your daughter and you respect any child of yours, uh, you should probably take that seriously. And if you do, and they have consultation with some kind of medical professional, and that medical professional agrees that, yeah, this is a genuine thing that this person is feeling, and I think that the solution to it is some kind of gender affirming care, you should be open to that.
Knowledge of her identity will develop over time.
Although most people who at any point identified with the opposite gender and got put on hormone blockers, like 90, I think it was 98% of them went on to fully transition later in life. So yeah, once people don't, it's very, very rare for people who are cisgender to question their gender identity in the same way that a trans person does. It's very rare for that to be the case. Um, it's rare to the point where it's not really worth mentioning. If you feel like something is incongruent between your sex assigned at birth and your gender identity, you're probably not cisgender. And as hopefully time passes and people get more and more understanding and more willing to accept that, more and more people will be able to acknowledge that about themselves. But that is strictly against the wishes of the conservatives.
Until then, being the adult in the relationship is the most loving thing you can do.
As opposed to the adults in the medical profession who also agree that that transition is the best treatment.
I'm Abigail Schreier, author of Irreversible Damage: The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this the same lady? Wait. Um this might be she might have a link to the exact same study that I like about rapid onset gender dysphoria. Let's see. Irreversible damage, transgender. Yeah, I think this is the same person. Let's see. Reception. Oh boy. While many of Schreier's claims may be open to challenge, the reported increase in cases of adolescent onset dysphoria should be a cause for much greater caution and disquiet than is currently the case. Had some valid ideas that he was not willing to dismiss her thesis entirely, but also that she failed to carefully hew her science, and that high quality, pre-registered open science scientific efforts were needed in the area. My guess, I believe that this is the most of this is based on the same study that was done on a specifically on a website for parents who were having to try and deal with uh, the wacky gender problems of their kids. Basically, just like a TERF website was where a lot of the survey was conducted. It was also conducted just entirely online, and the people who there was no like way to actually know who was actually taking part in this study. There was like the methodology behind this study, if this is the one I'm thinking of, is fucking insane, and it's really, really funny. And it's really upsetting that that is like what they will put all of their shit into, is like, yeah, no, this is totally, they can just cite this and they know that their base is not actually going to go look at what this study was, and even if they did, they wouldn't understand how it was wrong. uh, because they don't want their base to understand that. They keep them in a constant echo chamber, in a constant state of fear, just telling them everything is getting worse, so that they are unwilling to actually engage with the world around them. It's very disappointing. Uh, yeah, no, it's really interesting to see the change in rhetoric over the past year, even. Um, it's I worry about it very frequently. It is not something I am thrilled about.